Ballad of Johnny Arcane by Jim Nail, read by Jim Nail. Chapter 16, Badlands, Part 1. While the wagon rolled on over cobbles and chuck holes, Johnny lay on the floorboard under the swaying pots, pans, and knives, watching his own thoughts sift back through recent events. He grasped at certain things, moments in which his will had overcome his weakness. And slowly these glints of memory soothed the hollow in his stomach and the wizened desolation of his sex. He had been placed in an impossible situation, and he had done the right thing. He had not been armed for this. Choose your battles, Mars told him, but this battle had chosen him. The girl was like Lucy. She was no different than Lucy. Perhaps Lucy had once been in that very room, slave to the very same degradations. The work we do there will kill us. These were not multiple battles. This was all one battle, and he had chosen it. He felt his strength return. He sat up, stood, braced himself against the wagon's veering motions, lifted the tent flap, and stepped out onto the buckboard. They were rattling through a dark place of weathered walls and dense fog. Mars was almost asleep at the reins, the pony trotting ahead of her own volition. He startled as Johnny's weight sagged into the seat. Clear light. Are you feeling better? I'm feeling good. I did the right thing. Mars looked him up and down. You did what you did, Clearlight. We're just going to have to take it from there. Where are we? Don't worry about it. I know a place we'll be able to finish out the night safely. They rolled on in silence, and each wall was more dilapidated than the one before. Cornerstones were crumbled. Some lay in piles of rubble on the ground. Some lone ramparts stood thin and meaningless, supporting no roof, enclosing nothing. Bats flew in and out of freestanding chimneys. An owl regarded them from a sagging doorframe. Eventually the walls disappeared entirely, and they came into an open place where small fires freckled a ridge of rounded hills. Drawing closer, Johnny saw that they were not hills at all, but mounds of debris, broken things, wheels, boxes, piles of rags, scraps of rotting food, the dry skeletons of large animals. Here and there, shacks were built of boards and bed springs, and people gathered around the fires, warming their hands, roasting things on sticks, or just sitting, staring into the flames. These are the gentle people of the Badlands, said Mars. They can't protect you, but they won't hurt you. We can rest here. They found a smoldering fire with no one sitting by it, and there was a little grassy patch where the pony could graze. The wind was chilly, and they welcomed the warmth that Mars kindled from some old barn boards. The sparks disappeared in the darkness to join the invisible stars. Neither spoke. There was too much to say and no place to start. Sounds echoed from the distant fires. Voices, the snapping of sticks, someone singing, someone crying, people, or perhaps the wail of a far-off coyote. Johnny wasn't sure. His eyelids grew heavy. He started to sway on his feet. Suddenly he spooked. There was someone else standing next to him. a thin shadow swaying with him, leaning toward the fire. He glanced at Mars at the same time. Mars noticed the stranger. "Whoa, we have company." Johnny looked at the boy. Just a boy, no older than he himself had been when he first left home. Perhaps younger. He was little more than skin and bone. His hair was cropped short, and his eyes were sunk in two dark blue craters. A one-piece jumpsuit hung loosely from his shoulders. It was ripped in places and spattered with blood. He wore no shoes. "Are you all right?" The boy leaned forward and spoke, but his voice was but a soft and wordless mumble. Johnny pressed his ear closer. I can't hear you. Say it again." "I got away. They hurt me." Johnny turned to Mars. Can we give him something to eat?" Mars grumbled. Yeah, go ahead. In the wagon. Bread and cheese." Johnny went inside to fetch the food, all the while thinking, there's something familiar about that boy, something from the past. When he turned from the counter with the bread in his hand, the recognition flooded in. Jocko, the vulnerability, the slightness of build, the quiet, almost disembodied voice. This would be Jocko if he were to be thrust unexpectedly into this strange and hostile world. The boy ate the food dutifully, but without attention or appetite. "Water," he whispered. Johnny let him drink from his own canteen. "Take me with you." Mars's voice was firm. No riders." The boy was silent. He bowed his head, and his chest began to heave. "But at least can't we give him something else to wear? He's hurt, and his clothes are bloody." "This isn't your battle, Clearlight." "He's not a battle. He's a person." Mars groaned in exasperation. "You really want me to die, don't you? Inside. Where you were hiding. Just get something. Be quick about it." When Johnny returned, he had a floral print tunic with a fringed collar and a pair of red flared corduroys. There were no plain clothes in the trailer. He handed them to the boy. "Here, put these on." The boy took them, but he just stood there, clutching them to his chest, staring at the fire. "You heard him, Captain," said Mars. "Change your clothes." Absently, the boy undid a few buttons on his jumpsuit. It was all he needed to do. The garment fell off him like a corn husk, and he stood there naked. His body was covered with puffy bruises, and blood was just beginning to coagulate on a deep gash in his abdomen. Mars sighed. "Well, don't be showing off for us. Come on, get dressed." Still, the boy did not move. Mars looked at Johnny. "Oh, for the love of Basil. All right, then, let's do this." They lowered the boy's bare butt onto the stump. Johnny lifted his arms and poured the tunic over his head, while Mars struggled to pull the pants up onto his legs. Finally, the boy was dressed and seated. He looked ridiculous, like a rooster who had lost a cockfight. "That's it," said Mars. "We got an appointment in Dreamland now. Let's hope you're gone by the time the sun is up." He turned and started wearily for the wagon. Voices and the insistent rattling of the wagon staves woke them. "Pots and pans!" Dawn had broken. A dozen or so ragged people were gathered around the wagon, men, women, and children. Some of them were carrying things. A man held a long-handled pitchfork. A small goat struggled in the arms of a young girl. A woman had a wardrobe of soiled dresses draped over her arm. Another cradled a stack of what Johnny recognized were books, although he had only seen one before. Mars rubbed his eyes. "I'm not trading," he said. "I only take money." A man held up a fistful of bills. "We got money." Mars jumped down and took the bills between his fingers. "This is Highland money. You can't spend that here." Johnny looked around at the fire circle, the stump. The boy was nowhere to be seen. People started jumping up on the buckboard. "Clearlight, go in there and don't let them take anything without paying for it. Any money, I don't care, highland, lowland, don't worry about it." The wagon was choked with people. Women were taking pots and pans down from the hooks and running their fingers along the handles and lids, while men stroked the blades of knives. Johnny planted his legs firmly and stood in front of the canvas flap. He was a little afraid, especially of the men with the knives. But soon he relaxed. There was a gentle murmur in the voices and a spirit of respect in the way the patrons brought their wares to him and offered up their paper bills. He had no idea what anything should cost. He took the money and the customers left with happy smiles on their faces. The woman with the stack of books approached with a skillet in her free hand. "May I see your books?" he asked. She turned and shrugged the books his way. There was no place to set them down. 5 books. He took the stack in his hands and pawed through them. The first 4 were in a strange alphabet, annotated with odd shapes and symbols. But at the bottom, a thin volume with a tattered blue cover. The Collected Poems of the Known World. The title startled him and filled him with curiosity. "I want this one," he said. Yes, you may have. I want this pan. Very good for fish." She reached her hand awkwardly into her sleeve, but he shook his head. No money. We will trade." The woman stared at him, a wad of paper money in her hand. Then she clutched the pan to her chest, turned, and fled from the wagon like she had committed some great offense, leaving Johnny holding all 5 books. The first 4 he let drop. The book of poetry he shuffled under the buckboard seat. Later, when all the ragged people had completed their purchases and drifted on their way, Mars roused the pony and they started on the path through the trash hills. The pony seemed happy to be moving. After a while, Mars shook the reins and handed them to Johnny. "You take her, Clearlight. I want to count the earnings." At first, Johnny didn't think he was up to the task. His heart and mind were racked with a panorama of thoughts and emotions. But the pony just continued as long as the reins were slack, and eventually the reins themselves anchored him to the realities and responsibilities of this strange world. "You did fine, Clearlight." Mars turned the bills over in his hands. "Lots of money. Where'd you get that book?" Johnny laid his hands on the book in his lap, feeling foolish and embarrassed. "You traded it, didn't you? Thought we said there'd be no trades." Johnny tightened his fingers on the book's 4 corners. I didn't think there was something that you would want." "Well, let me see it." Mars pried the book from Johnny's hands. He held it up like an offering to the sky and flipped through the pages one by one. He stopped at a certain page and stared at it until a smile curled his lips, then a chuckle. "Holy Beazle! My mother used to read this to me back when I was her little love child. I could recite it by heart. This is why she named me Mars. Did your mother ever read to you, Clearlight?" No, there were no books. Sometimes we sang songs together. Well, this one's for you then. This can be your medicine. This can be your daydream. Listen. Mars read the poem in a playful, chanted rhythm, the way a mother would read to a child. Now the Now the four-way lodge is opened. Now the hunting winds are loose. Now the smoke of spring goes up to clear the brain. Now the young man's heart is troubled. Now the red gods make their medicine again. He must go, he must go, he must go away from here. See, your road is clear before you, when the old spring fret comes o'er you, and the red gods call for you. A drum seemed to beat in the air for a while after Mars stopped reading. The pony was dancing and the wagon was swaying in time. The bleak edges of the landscape softened like a watercolor. Then Mars closed the book with a pop. It's okay you traded, Clearlight. I don't mind. I traded too. Look at this. Johnny looked. Mars was holding a large and formidable knife. It looked older than a dolmen, a single shaft of heavy dark metal pounded out in an age before no time. Unhilted, unserrated, unadorned, a weapon with a simple purpose. Its coarse texture reflected nothing of the pale overhead sun. It stirred something like dread in the cauldron of Johnny's stomach. Beautiful, isn't it? Someday, one of us will have use for this.